Welcome everybody to pre-stream for Monster Monday. I am DM Gallibond. Tonight we're back to looking at another monster out of the Strixhaven Source book. We're going to be looking at the Daemogoths. I always pronounce that incorrectly. Daemogoth. So, yes. Alright, come on. You stupid little thing here, you. Alright, let's go. There you go. Wonderful. Alright. Got that monitor set up. Now I need to go get this monitor set up. Alright. Yes, we are, in fact, streaming the pre-show for a few minutes of it, just making sure everything is all set up. Viewers, if you have any questions about the Daemogoths, please be sure you think about those and post them in the stream during the chat. I will be monitoring these streams, and we have a Q&A towards the end, so I will be checking on that. Thank you for joining us, Caxips. And thank you, TV viewer, for being here. Hope everybody's having a good Monday, wherever you are. If you are watching us from the US, it's been a Monday. If you're watching us from overseas, it might already be Tuesday. Had folks on from New Zealand before for a Monster Monday, which is kind of nice. Have those people checking us out. And if you are joining us, please be sure to follow us on either Twitch or over on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel on either place. Let us know, interact with us during the video, and we will try to answer your questions as the stream progresses. Alright. Getting down to about a minute before we get started. Start at the top of the hour. Alright, well, of course, we're hearing the sounds of Sirenscape here, but we're kind of near the stage over here. Why don't you join me, come over here a little bit closer to the fire over this way. Yeah, we'll get a little farther away from the stage. Yeah, that's it. Have this nice quiet table over here. Alright, yeah, that's good, that's good. Okay, and everyone, welcome to Monster Monday. I am DM Gallibond. Hope you are having a great Monday today. We are here to talk about a monster in D&D, and tonight we are going to be looking at the Daemogoths. Yes, that's right, Daemogoths, because there's two different kinds. The Daemogoths come to us from the Strixhaven A Curriculum of Chaos campaign for D&D, and they are also monsters that appeared prior to that in the Strixhaven Magic the Gathering expansion. So we're going to take a little bit little bit of a look at the origins, how they are used, and then kind of pull them out of their setting and talk about how you can use them in your own homebrew campaigns. All right, let's dive right in. Okay, so the first place we see a Daemogoth is on a card in Magic the Gathering. And this is a Daemogoth Woe Eater. And as you'll notice, this guy has a bunch of arms, a weird sort of thing going on with his head there, wearing robes, and you can tell by the person in the lower right corner of the card art that he's very, very tall. They like giant-sized creatures in this particular campaign. A lot of the monsters you find in here are very, very tall. Also, it's a 4 mana creature, and you can use 1 mana that can be any color, and 3 of the mana. Out of the other 3 mana, 1 has to be green, 1 has to be black, and the third can be either black or green. So they didn't do that much where they called for 1 of 2 specific colors back when I was playing Magic. Like I always say, peak Magic for me was when the slivers came out, and I think they realized they had made a mistake with slivers because the sliver decks were just so much fun to play. And then you had to really start to work after the slivers came out to try to build a deck. You just couldn't build a deck that was just plain fun anymore. And that's when I lost patience with the game and quit playing. And I just want to play for fun. I don't care about playing competitively. Of course I want to win, but I want to win in a fun way, not having to outthink the strategy of my opponent. So this is a demon creature in Magic the Gathering, and because it's only 4 mana to cast a creature that's fairly powerful, a 7 power, 6 toughness, it always has a gimmick. And so the gimmick with this one is at the beginning of your upkeep, you have to sacrifice a creature. And then when you sacrifice Daemogoth Woe Eater, each opponent discards a card, you draw a card, and you gain 2 life. So it requires you to do some ongoing stuff. It's a pretty beefy monster while it's out there, and then when you get rid of it, it hurts your opponents and it helps you. And then the flavor text on this card, you're paying for my wisdom. You'll get no better deal. Alright, so the origins of this. There's actually 2 Daemogoth cards in the Strixhaven School of Mages expansion. They are the Daemogoth Woe Eater, pictured here, and the Daemogoth Titan, which will be on the next slide. They're both very powerful cards, each one costing only 4 mana, but they do require specific mana sources. And we talked about how this is a 7 power, 6 toughness, but the Titan is an 11 power, 10 toughness creature that also requires 4 mana to cast, and all 4 must be either black or green. And the cost to keep that creature around is that you must sacrifice a creature every time the Titan attacks or blocks. So one of the nice things I do like about Magic the Gathering is they always give us very clear credit for the artwork. So the artwork on this card is by Alex Brock. And it's from the Strixhaven set, card number 175 out of 275. So that's one of the places that it first appears. And actually, yeah, okay. Actually, we will get to the other picture of the Daemogoth Titan in a little bit. But I want to talk about the Daemogoths of the origins in the campaign. The Daemogoth does not appear in the campaign until the final showdown with the antagonist, and the party must fight their way through the defenders of the antagonist's lair, one of whom is a named Daemogoth, who is eagerly anticipating the agony that will be unleashed on the world when the antagonist finishes his grand scheme. And the Daemogoth in this particular instance is someone named Kelvor. And this is an image that we find in the campaign of Kelvor himself. So the Daemogoths, they all have these multiple arms going on, multiple eyes, weird mouth, and crazy head thing. But the description of them does indicate that they're not they don't all look alike. So, it's not like they're all ladybugs or something where they all are the same color and have the same pattern and everything like that. They all have unique differences with a similar morphology. So the Daemogoth has some different artwork than the normal Daemogoths, with a stat block of a normal Daemogoth and not that of a Titan. Alright, now here is a card for the Daemogoth Titan, who does come to us from Magic the Gathering. And as you can tell, the 4 mana, and it has those little symbols, meaning that all 4 of those must be either black or green. And whenever the Daemogoth Titan attacks or blocks, sacrifice a creature. And then the flavor text on this says, of course it offered you power. Demons always do, but trust me, the sweeter the prize, the more ruinous the price. That is from Professor Onyx. And this creature, as we said, is an 11 power, 10 toughness. So the idea here is that this guy can block a lot of things or he can mow over, but every time he attacks or blocks, you've got to sacrifice them. So you've got to be able to pump out a bunch of creatures whenever you have him on the board, because he's going to cost you monsters every time you use him. So the description of the monster, there's stat blocks for 2 Daemogoths given in the campaign, the normal Daemogoth and the Daemogoth Titan. And for the normal Daemogoth, it says, Daemogoths are alien-looking in the extreme. Their eyes are insectile or smooth and bulbous, like gleaming jewels. And they have 5 arms. They typically wear long robes which drape low over their forms, and they sport a halo of horns, antlers, or floating stones or crystals. And then Daemogoth Titans are towering monsters that blight the land around them. A Daemogoth grows in power over the course of decades spent feeding on sorrow and draining life from nature. Eventually that growth turns the Daemogoth into a Titan. So, and that is how you go from being a regular Daemogoth to a Daemogoth Titan. And I believe over on the left, I think we're supposed to be seeing a humanoid person over on the left in the lower part, kind of for scale. Right here, I believe that's supposed to be a human, so you can see how much bigger this monster is than even the regular Daemogoth. So yeah, they're supposed to be really, really big. Alright, now this image here is a picture of the Daemogoth out of the campaign sourcebook. And if you look kind of closely, you'll see that what they did here is they basically just took some detail from this card here, and they gave us, I think they gave us, they gave us the same guy, but just with slightly enhancing the perspective and pulling from a little bit of a different piece of the overall canvas than they did for the artwork on the card. So now we want to talk a little bit about the monster lore. So Daemogoth lore says, slipping through the darkest corners of the world, Daemogoths are powerful fiendish creatures that feed on misery and other negative emotions. Some sages refer to Daemogoths as tear lickers, owing to the fiend's tendency to lurk near battlefields and other sites of great tragedy to consume the anguish saturating the area. Daemogoths are creatures of forbidden knowledge and magic, all fueled by their consumption of anguish. They trade magical influence over the lives and minds of others to ambitious mortals in exchange for the mortals' agony. And then for the lore concerning Daemogoth Titans, it says the Titans maintain their lesser cousin's ability to trade magical power for a mortal's pain, but they tend to demand more punishing suffering in exchange for their pacts or knowledge. And when a supplicant piques a Daemogoth Titan's interest, the Titan can grant a blessing to the supplicant, which you would look at the supernatural gifts in the DM's guide. As long as the creature has the blessing, it must expend and roll 2 of its hit dice whenever it finishes a long rest. It takes psychic damage equal to the total rolled, and its hit point maximum is reduced by an amount equal to the psychic damage taken. This reduction lasts until the creature finishes its next long rest. So the creature dies if this effect reduces its hit point maximum to 0. And the blessing can be removed only by a wish spell. So now it's important to know that this 2 hit die loss of hit points, it's not cumulative. It doesn't mean that every day you lose 2 hit dice, an additional 2 hit dice of your hit point maximum. It means that every day when you finish your long rest, for an instant, your hit point total goes up to your normal maximum. And then you roll 2 hit dice, and you lose those hit points. You also expend those 2 hit dice. So you cannot use those 2 hit dice to regain hit points during the day. And so that is kind of the cost of making a bargain with one of these creatures. So as you can tell in D&D, they're not very nice creatures at all. They are, in fact, really, really, harsh masters when it comes to, oh yes, I'll give you this gift, but I will demand a price from you. Just make sure that that price is one that you're willing to pay. And DMs, remember, use that. Always talk up the benefits of the gift, but say as little as you can about the price that they're going to pay for that gift until it's too late to turn back. Because then, if they enter into this bargain and they find out the price, oh, well, then they've got to find somebody who can cast a wish to get them out of it. So, so that is the drawback there of that gift. All right, and Daemogoths are fiends. So, properties of fiends, they're creatures of wickedness that are native to the lower planes. A few are servants of deities, but many more labor under the leadership of archdevils and demon princes. Evil priests and mages sometimes summon fiends to the material world to do their bidding. If an evil celestial is a rarity, a good fiend is almost inconceivable. Fiends include demons, devils, hellhounds, rakshasas, and yugalas. And this is an image of the Daemogoth Titan from the Strixhaven campaign. Now, because these creatures are pact creatures, that means that they are generally lawful evil. The pact, you can think of a pact as kind of like a contract, and contracts are all about, the law, or in the case of devils and Daemogoths, they're about tyranny over the people that enter into the contracts with them. So they're binding, and they will adhere to the letter of the law, to the letter of the pact. But you'll find that anytime you enter into a pact with a devil, it's almost always the devil that's getting the better bargain than the mortal is. All right, so now we're going to go and we're going to take a look at the mechanical features of the Daemogoths. Alright, and we are going to start by looking over here at the normal Daemogoth. Okay, so the Daemogoth is a huge fiend, so that means on a map with 5-foot squares, it takes up a 3x3 square, so 15 by 15 would be the token size for the Daemogoth. Has an armor class of 16, 157 hit points, a moving speed and climb speed of 4. Or lower, and either necromancy or enchantment. When it casts a spell, the creature takes 2d6 psychic damage, which cannot break the creature's concentration on a. It's a multi-attack. It makes 3 agonizing burst attacks. Can use Terrify if available in place of one of the attacks. Now, agonizing burst is one of these interesting things where there's a few monsters bumping around that have this kind of attack. It's exactly the same attack that can be used ranged or melee. So with a melee attack, it is a reach of 10 feet. As a ranged attack, it's a range out to 120 feet. And it has one target, and it deals 2d10 force damage. And if the target is a creature, the Daemogoth regains 5 hit points. Now, notice, if the target is a creature, doesn't say if it lands the hit. Just if it targets a creature, it gains 5 hit points every time it uses Agonizing Burst. Well, then it has the Recharge, which is a Terrify, and it recharges on 4 to 6. So targets one creature can see with 120 feet. Target must make a DC 17 Wisdom save. On a failed save, it takes 6d10 psychic damage and is frightened of the Daemogoth until the end of the Daemogoth's next turn. And the Daemogoth regains 5 hit points. On a successful save, the target takes half as much damage and isn't frightened, and the Daemogoth doesn't heal. So, with the regular Agonizing Burst, it doesn't have to land the attack, and as long as it's targeting a creature, and it regains hit points. With the Terrify, it must land the attack in order to regain hit points. So that's a very important distinction. If you are a DM that has rules lawyers there at the table, make sure that you have a firm grasp on that distinction and point out the way those two attacks are worded to make sure that you have everybody on board of how these powers work. Alright, so now let's take a look at the Daemogoth Titan. Now, the Daemogoth Titan is a gargantuan fiend, typically chaotic evil. Okay, so interesting. It's the normal Daemogoth is lawful evil, typically. The Titan is typically chaotic evil. So, gargantuan also means that the token takes up 20 by 20 space. So 4 by 4 on a grid of 5-foot squares. So armor class is 17, hit points 203, speed 40 feet. Notice it doesn't have a climb speed. The stat block, the strength and the con are much higher. The intelligence is higher. Everything is pretty much higher across the board except for the dexterity. The normal Daemogoth has a dex of 15. The Daemogoth Titan only has a dex of 10. It has a bunch of bonuses to its saving throws and skills. Again, it's immune to psychic psychic damage, and it's immune to being charmed or frightened. True sight out to 120 feet, passive perception 19, same languages and telepathy, challenge rating 16. Okay, now notice it picks up a few additional things. Now it has legendary resistance. So legendary resistance is the ability to choose to succeed on a saving throw when you fail. And like most creatures with legendary resistance, it gets 3 of those per day. So those do not recharge every round. Once they are expended for the day, they are gone. As a DM, you want to make a note to yourself at the beginning of the fight, they've got 3. And in Roll20, what I've started trying to do when I have those, I use one of those little circles. Just one of those little colored circles, and I'll put a 3 in it. And then every time I use up a legendary resistance, I just change that counter from 3 down to 2, down to 1. And then when it uses, I just take that circle away. So that just helps me remember how many legendary resistances the monster has. Then it has a Pact of Suffering. So again, 10-minute ritual. Forges a bond. The creature becomes bound by the pact until it dies, the Titan dies, or the pact is broken by a wish spell. And then the Titan chooses one spell from Necromancy or Enchantment that is 8th level or lower. Okay, remember the first one could grant you the ability to cast a spell of 3rd level or lower from those 2 schools. The Titan can let you cast a spell of 8th level or lower. And when the creature casts that spell, it takes 66 psychic damage, which cannot break the creature's concentration on a spell. Once the bound creature casts a spell in this way, it can't do so again until it finishes a long rest. And then multi-attack makes 2 Agonizing Burst. Well, Agonizing Burst works the same way, except in this case, the melee reach is 15 feet instead of 10 feet. And the damage is 3d6 plus 7 force damage. And again, if it targets a creature, it regains 5 hit points. The Daemogoth Titan can also teleport. So he can teleport himself to an unoccupied space he can see within 120 feet of itself. And it also gets legendary actions. Now, remember legendary actions, they do recharge at the top of every round. At the beginning of the Daemogoth's turn, they recharge, and you can use only 1 legendary action at a time, and you have to use it at the end of another creature's turn. So, cannot do legendary actions on its own turn, it has to wait to the end of someone else's turn. Now, one tactic I like to use is as we come around to the monster, at the end of the creature's turn, if the monster still has a legendary action left, I like to find, whatever it can do with 1 action and do that. Then all of those legendary actions recharge and the monster gets its turn. So it gets like an extra attack at the beginning of its turn, takes its full turn, and then it can have its full complement of legendary actions through the next round. Alright, so the options it has for legendary actions, it can do an Agonizing Burst attack. For 2 actions, it can do something called Stalking Nightmare. Uses teleport, after which it can target 1 creature within 20 feet, and it must make a DC 20 Constitution save, or take 4d10 necrotic damage, and the Titan regains 10 hit points. So on a successful save, target heals half as much damage, and a Titan doesn't heal. And then, of course, for all 3 legendary actions, it can do the Terrorize. And this guy's version of the Terrorize requires a DC 20 Wisdom save, and if you fail that, you take 7d10 psychic damage, and you're frightened of the Titan until the end of the target's next turn, and the Titan regains 15 hit points. Then the same caveat, if you make that save, not frightened, take half as much damage, and the Titan does not heal. So those are the Daemogoth Titan, or the Daemogoth and the Daemogoth Titan. So DMs, are you beginning to get an idea of what you might want to do with these creatures? I hope so. We are going to go back and take a look at our slides and continue to talk about the Daemogoths. All right, so now how would we create a hard encounter with one of these creatures for a party of 5 PCs by level? All right, so this time I just chose to go with the Daemogoth Titan. It's a CR16 monster. So that means if you have 5 PCs that are 11 or 12, the Daemogoth Titan by itself is a hard encounter. Now you raise that party's level to anywhere from 13 to 15, it becomes a medium encounter. And for a level 15 party, you could throw them against a regular Daemogoth and a Daemogoth Titan. And that would make it a hard encounter. And if the party is level 16 to 20, one Daemogoth Titan becomes an easy encounter, so why not throw 2 Daemogoth Titans against the party at level 20? So that is an option there. Hey Amish, glad you could make it. Alright, so now if you are a player and your DM gets that gleam in his or her eye and reveals on the battle map that, oh, there's a Daemogoth that you have to fight. Oh dear, now what are you going to do? So, against a Daemogoth, prepare for agony. So Daemogoth gets 3 attacks per round. All 3 can be range or melee and called the Burst of Agony. So they're going to hit you with some psychic damage. Be brave. Daemogoth has a rechargeable attack called Terrify that can frighten a target up to 120 feet away from the monster. And beware of pacts. Daemogoth can make a pact with a creature that allows that creature to cast a spell without expending a spell slot, but by taking psychic damage instead. Now, there's we're going to talk a little bit about those pacts, and I'm going to give you kind of an example of how you might use that when we talk about placing these in a campaign. All right, so now let's say you're a player and your DM gets that same grin, and instead of throwing a regular Daemogoth at you, the DM throws a Daemogoth Titan at you. Now, what are you going to do? Well, first of all, you're facing a legend. Daemogoth Titan has both 3 legendary actions per round and 3 legendary resistances per day. So factor that into your strategy when you're going to fight them. Again, prepare for agony. Gets 2 attacks per round. Both can be range or melee, called the Burst of Agony. Ultimate mobility. Daemogoth Titan can teleport around the battlefield every single round. So, just, if the Daemogoth Titan only used its legendary actions to do attacks, it could theoretically, on its action, on its turn, it could teleport to a different part of the battlefield within 120 feet every single round. And if it gets the PCs spread out enough, it could then basically get far enough away from just about everybody every time it teleports that it can hit you with one of its ranged attacks, but you cannot reach it to hit it with your melee attacks. So that is a really frustratingly amazing, incredible, and fun, if you're the DM, ability that you can use in a battle. So then watch out for the Stalking Nightmare. Can use a legendary action to make an attack called the Stalking Nightmare, which involves both teleportation and a short-range necrotic energy attack that can also heal the Titan. And be brave. It has that legendary attack called Terrify that can frighten a target up to 120 feet away from the monster and also heals damage the Titan has suffered. So that is some things to think about if you are a player. Now let's go behind the screen. You're the DM and you want to throw one of these monsters at your party. So Daemogoth is a creature you can use outside of encounters with great effect. It can be a classic fiend in using its telepathic communication to offer to make a bond with a character, perhaps one that has suffered an emotional wound, and promise to offer a pact that will result in more power. Let's just say, for instance, let's say that you have a fighter. Your fighter has an NPC love interest. And while your fighter has been off adventuring, some wicked, wicked people have gone to your fighter's hometown and they have slaughtered a bunch of people. And one of the people that has been killed was your fighter's beloved. Oh, that fighter is devastated. That fighter is filled with agony. That fighter is filled with a desire for revenge. What better way than to have a telepathic message come to the fighter's mind? Perhaps when they're just on the edge of sleep. Perhaps come to them in a way that seems like it's a dream. I know you hurt. I know you're in agony. I know you seek revenge. I can offer you a gift. I can give you the gift of Finger of Death. Hunt down those who hurt your beloved. Strike them down with the gift that I give you. Take your revenge upon them and show them that none will be able to hurt you again. Take my gift. Take my gift. You do that, you make them that kind of promise. Oh my gosh. There's going to be some PCs that'll be like, yes, yes, let me do it. I want that. And they'll gladly enter into that bargain. And hey, Daemogoth is going to be just as good as their word. Especially Daemogoth Titan. They can give you that Finger of Death spell. I think that's a necromancy spell. It does necrotic damage, so I think it's a necromancy spell. I might be wrong about that. But anyway, you can have it. You can have that spell gifted to that creature or to that PC, and then DM. First time they go to use it, you get to roll some dice, and when they realize that they've entered into that pact every day, you get to have them reduce their hit point maximum and expend some hit dice. Oh yes, that is one of the fun ways of using a monster like this in a D&D campaign. All right, so now in combat, if you're not gonna use a Daemogoth to make a pact with a PC or try to offer a pact to the PC, then we may have to have a conversation about revoking your DM card if you're not going to use that ability. So in combat, the Daemogoth should probably open with its Terrify attack against whichever PC seems to be the biggest threat, and then send both of its Agonizing Burst attacks at the next biggest threat using range or melee attacks as necessary. Now that's obviously if you're fighting a normal Daemogoth. So now if you are DM with a Daemogoth Titan, has that same telepathic ability and offer a bond with PC out of combat with the benefit of even more powerful spell. So I want to emphasize the benefits and minimize the cost to the target. So don't be afraid to take the first round in combat to teleport if necessary. Remember the Titan gets those legendary actions which can all be used in attacks. So when necessary, you can use the Stalking Nightmare and terrorize attacks to regain health and also deal out more damage to the PCs. And then where would we place these in a campaign? Well, the Strixhaven Campaign book suggests these creatures haunt places that have seen great agony, such as battlefields. So I might suggest that you could also expand that to include sites of other tragedies, from natural disasters, like where there's been an earthquake or an avalanche or mudslide or something like that, wildfire that has gone through an area and killed a bunch of people, or maybe one of your cities in your campaign has suffered a great urban fire. The Great Chicago Fire, the late 1800s. The old myth about Mrs. O'Leary's cow knocking over the lantern and setting the barn on fire, and then how that spread to the rest of the city and burned down. And then the Great Fire of London in the mid-1600s, so where much of the city of London went up in smoke. So if there's an urban environment that includes an advanced sewer system, the Daemogoth or the Daemogoth Titan, depending on the size of your sewers, might use these conduits to move around under the city and get close enough to tempt PCs via telepathy with their offer of a Pact of Pain or a Pact of Suffering. So introducing this monster directly after a PC in the party has suffered a devastating personal loss could be a great way to add some RP opportunities, especially if the player decides they want to keep the Pact a secret from the other players at your table. Now, what I will say as a DM, I will say if you plan to introduce this as a possibility, you might want to have a conversation with your player whose character has suffered a loss before you do that, and just kind of gauge, okay, what is Fred the Fighter's mental state right now? How is Fred feeling? Is Fred feeling, is he sad about this? Does he want revenge? What is his state of mind? Is he distracted by this loss? Talk to me about how he's feeling, and sort of gauge how your player is feeling. And if your player is really motivated for revenge, then maybe your player gets to roll some dice, and maybe your player catches wind of, well, there seems to be some power that is able to offer the grieving a path to revenge. And then maybe that player wants to go check that out. And so when they do, that gives you even more license to pull that in. And then, of course, when the first consequences come up, or when you get ready to do that, you can then talk to the player. Okay, if you do something to go on a path of revenge, do you want to make that known to everybody else in the party, or do you want to keep that quiet? And maybe you have one of those players that just would rather keep that quiet, would rather have those moments where, either through private message in Discord or through offline communications or running over and whispering in their ear, you have conversations with that player and the DM about, what is going to happen here. So that is a pretty cool thing that you can do. All right, now what if you want to reskin the Daemogoth? So the Daemogoth fits the perfect niche of a fiend. First options that come to mind are reskinning these monsters as some kind of greater fae, with their packs being more potent versions of the kind of bargains that a hag may make with a PC. Now, you always talk about these greater fae and how greater fae will have packs, and we saw a little bit of that in the Wild Beyond the Witchlight adventure that came out towards the end of last year. But they really didn't explore that too much. You might say that you could reskin a Daemogoth and give it this same Pact ability, but then have it be a greater Fae and have it affect people who travel to the Feywild, or that are in areas where the Feywild borders on the natural world. So another fairly obvious option would be to simply reskin the Daemogoth to make them more humanoid in appearance. So one of these fiends might be reskinned to appear more like the character of Mephistopheles in Faust, or the handsome devil at the crossroads that offers bargains for a steep price to someone who's seeking a shortcut to wealth, fame, power, or love. The Faust legend is, of course, the aging man who sees a beautiful young woman and falls madly in love and wants to be with her. I think in the original legend, I think she was a newlywed or something like that. So Faust meets this very suave and debonair gentleman who promises that he can get this woman for her. And he makes this bargain with Mephistopheles and realizes after he's made the bargain that the price for it is his soul. And I think the devil causes the husband of the young woman to die, and then causes her to fall in love with Faust. And he thinks it's going to be wonderful. Of course, it's never as wonderful as he thinks it's going to be. And then he's always got this burden that at the end of his life, his soul is forfeit anyway. And then going all the way back to Robert Johnson, in an American blues tradition, there's this whole notion of going down to the crossroads on the bayou to meet the devil. And, he gives you the gift of being able to play guitar really well and become a famous musician. So, all kinds of legends have grown up around that, in blues and rock and roll and everything. So, yeah, you could take the Daemogoth and put him in the skin of someone like that. Could be, obviously it could be male, it could be female, whatever is appropriate for the character in your game. All right. And I think that's going to bring us to the end of our time. I'm going to look over here on these screens, and I'm going to find out if we have any questions. Okay, I don't think we have any questions right now, so what I am going to do is I am going to go ahead and go into the wrap-up. And I have been DM Gallibond. This has been Monster Monday, and tonight we have been looking at the Daemogoths. This is one of 4 live streams that I do most weeks. We will be having our Sunday game. We'll be coming back this coming Sunday. We are doing a 5th edition Planeswalking game where we cross the streams between Magic the Gathering and 5e. Thursday night, we are going to have our last Sword Coast Chronicles on Thursday night. It's not our last Sword Coast Chronicles session, it's our last Sword Coast Chronicles on Thursday night, because one of our players has had a job change. And by unanimous decision from the players, they wanted to move that game so that he could continue playing with us. So starting in April, the Sword Coast Chronicles will be on Wednesday night instead of on Thursday night. Still be 8 p.m. Eastern Time, but we'll talk more about that in the game this week, and I'll announce it, and I'll set up the schedule and everything for streaming. All right, then Saturday night. Well, my other great love beyond D&D is live sports, and I have season tickets to the professional soccer teams in my town, and wouldn't you know it, that the scheduling gods have put a lot of games on Saturdays between the two teams this year. So for the next 3 Saturdays, the Saturday Night Greyhawk is not happening. We will not have another one of those until the last Saturday in April. So we will be back with that then. We've talked about it, and I think one of the other players in that game is going to run something for the players on Saturday nights in that time slot. And then every time I'm available, we'll just stream the Saturday Night Greyhawk. Otherwise, they will play an alternate game. You can find all of our streams over on Twitch at twitch.tv/Gallibond. If you're watching us over there, please go ahead and give us a follow. You can also find all of our archives over on YouTube. If you're watching on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share the video, click the post notification bell. And then we do have a Patreon in case you want to throw a little bit of change our way and help us be able to do some more content. All right, I'm going to double check and see if we had any more questions come in on the Daemogoths. I don't believe that we did. Nope, doesn't look like we did. All right, so I am going to bring the music back up, and then I will go and look for somebody that we can raid. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. All right. Okay, looks like the Smash Oasis is having their D&D game, so let's go ahead and let's raid them. All right, everybody. Thank you guys so much for hanging out this evening. Hope you have a wonderful week. Hope we will see you on some of the other streams. Check out all the archives. Good night, and remember to watch out for the monsters under the bed. Take care, everybody.